What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Team Chat Podcast, a video game show where we talk about games, the ones we love, the ones we hate, and everything in between. I am one of your hosts, Jerrett Wilson, joined across the power of the internet by Rachel Mogan.
Buongiorno.
Buongiorno to you as well. How are you this fine day?
I'm doing it decently well. It was only 91 in Texas yesterday, which was very exciting. We actually got to go outside. It was pretty nice.
Oh, yeah. And we've got that nice little thunderstorm to start off the day and everything, too.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Who doesn't? Is there anything better in the world than a weekend morning thunderstorm?
It's
the best.
It really is, because I woke up and I was just like, oh, guess I'm going to be playing some games today. I just wish it would have started maybe just a little bit later, because then Fender wouldn't have been freaking out and woke us up by walking all over us
Poor Fender.
Unfortunately, though, he didn't freak out in this storm as much as he has in past ones lately. So that was nice that we were able to get him calmed down and everything and be able to enjoy it. But yeah, so it was just a good, calm day of playing some great games and everything, which is what we're here to talk to you about today. But we'll get to those in just a second. But you can subscribe to this show on podcast services around the World Wide Web, as well as watch a video version of each episode over on our YouTube channel. Links for all that are in the description below. Find us on social media such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And you can also join our Discord server, where we have a lot of fun conversations about games and other gaming topics when we're not here recording the show. And so hit us up there. That's a lot of fun to hang out there on that community. And also you can support the show through patreon.com if you're like, man, this show is great. I love Jerrett and Mogan. They spit some great video game facts and great video game knowledge, and I just want to help them make that show bigger and better. Well, you can do that by going to patreon.com/teamchatpodcast, where it's for as little as $1 a day, $1 a month. You can support the show.
$1 a day.
If you want to do
$1 per day.
Yeah, if you want to do $1 a day, we won't stop you. But if for as little as $1 a month, you can support the show, and in return, we'll give you cool perks like getting the episodes early before the general Tuesday release, access to a patron-only channel on our Discord server, and a lot of other fun goodies and bits of video game fun that we like to intersperse here and there. I didn't say the one you don't like. I caught myself. But,
oh boy.
But patreon.com/teamchatpodcast. If you can't do that, that's no big deal at all. We totally understand, but we still appreciate your support in helping the making the show bigger and better by just listening to the show, telling your friends, writing us reviews. All that great stuff helps us out as well. And we appreciate each and every one of our patrons and listeners. Heart emojis. But before we get into the big topic of the day, let's get a little bit of news and what's coming out soon in our Moment with Mogan.
You say a little bit, but as it turns out, the end of August is almost just as packed with games as the beginning of August was. So I guess just home stretch in summer, every developer under the sun is wanting to get their game out. So all the following are coming out on August 25th. Descenders for PlayStation 4. Insurgency Sandstorm for PS4 and Xbox One. No Straight Roads for PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Street Power Soccer for PlayStation 1, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Vader Immortal for PlayStation VR. Fascinating.
I want that it looks so cool. VR lightsabers.
That's Beat Saber. They already have VR lightsabers. I want Beat Saber too.
I want both.
So on August 27th, we have Best Friend Forever on Switch and PC, which I feel like just reading that title could either go the route of being very sincere, like BFF type of friendship game, or the twisted alternative of Best Friends Forever, and maybe it's a mystery crime thriller or something. Who knows? On August 27th as well, this one's actually really near and dear to both of us, Control. The AWE DLC comes out. So This will be the final DLC pack for Control. It was the one that came out previously to this was Foundation, or The Foundation. So this will be the last one. I can't wait to pick up both. I was waiting for AWE to come out so that I could get both Foundation and AWE and just play them seamlessly.
Yep.
So I'm very excited about that. This is one that I know at least one of our listeners is really attached to. Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered Edition is finally coming out for PlayStation 4 and Nintendo Switch on August 27th as well. This next one is one of the ones that was teased in the Indie Direct that we talked about last time. Hypnospace Outlaw for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Switch. Very excited about that. Still Stand for PC, iOS, and Android. And mobile gets one. That's on August 27th. So is Surgeon Simulator 2 for PC. There's also Tell Me Why for Xbox One and PC.
Oh,
Tour de France 2020 for Tell Me Why.
that's
Is that
the
one
episodic one. The
Oh my god,
the new
you're
Don't
right.
Nod. I forgot that was coming out.
Correct? Is that
I
really
believe
coming
so.
out that soon?
I'm pretty sure it is. But I mean, we're not
Dang.
playing it until episode 5's released.
Also, I didn't realize that it was only going to be for Xbox One and PC. Is that correct?
Maybe the PS4? Man, that's confusing. I thought it was
Alright,
for everything. I'll check that out real quick.
Yeah, we'll double check on that. That's weird. Anyways, Tour de France 2020, the game everybody was waiting for, am I right? Is also out for PC. Captain Tsubasa: Rise of New Champions for PlayStation 4, Switch, and PC comes out on August 28th. So does Jump Force for the Switch. So I believe that this is a port, but Jump Force I think is a pretty adored indie game, if I'm not mistaken. Madden NFL 21, a scam and you shouldn't buy it. Don't buy into sports games. That comes out for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Stadia, and PC. Nexamon Extinction for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Project Cars 3 for PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Shing? Shing? No idea what that is, but that's for PS4, Switch, and PC. Wasteland 3, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Windbound comes out for PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. And then Descenders gets a final month port. So it comes out for PS4 today on August 25th. And then it's also making its way to the Switch on August 34th. So Descenders gets 2 in 1 month. And
nice.
Good God, that's everything coming out in the last part of August.
That was a big list right there.
So long.
So I went and looked, and Tell Me Why is going to be exclusive for Xbox One and Microsoft Windows.
That's actually very shocking. I'm not perturbed, obviously, because I was going to wait for 1,000 years anyways, but I hope that eventually it makes it to PS4.
Yeah,
I assume it will.
I guess I just totally glanced over that they showed it off at the Xbox Game Showcase, but I was just so used to seeing Don't Nod stuff be for both that it didn't even cross my mind.
Think about it either. Well,
but there we go. But it's only supposed to be 3
Xbox.
episodes, so we'll only have to wait maybe a year.
Oh boy!
I did say though they were planning. What I was looking at was saying they were planning to release the 3 episodes throughout mid 2020. So maybe they'll all still come out this year. So,
okay, that would be
exciting. Would be better for a faster release window. That is better.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
we'll take what we can get.
Exactly. So for the main topic today, we talked about this in our live episode last week, which thanks for coming out and enjoying that with us, everybody. That was a ton of fun getting to talk about a wide range of gaming topics. But of course, the big thing that we were super excited about in that live episode was the Nintendo Indie World Direct that happened, where it showed off a ton of great games. And Mogan and I both snatched up one of the games. Well, we each snatched up a different game that was shown off there that was released the day of that Indie World Direct. So Mogan got Spiritfarer, and she'll be talking about that in a second. I picked up, though, Raji, an Ancient Epic. And so we're going to give our first impressions of both of these games because and then once we finish them, we'll circle back around and do some big full-on reviews for them all. But both of these
what we're
games
planning to do is we're both going to then buy the other game. So I'm then going to get Raji and Jerrett's going to get Spiritfarer. So we're both going to have played both of them for our final reviews, which is always a fun time.
And because both of these games I felt hit a special chord with both of us. So I think both of those games we were very interested in being okay, we both need to play these and we both need to see what these are about. So
exactly.
they all looked great, and they've both been getting incredible acclaim already from people who play them in reviews coming out. But so starting off with them with Raji, an Ancient Epic is developed by Nodding Head Games, published by Super.com or Super.com Limited, and was designed by Avishal Singh. And so what immediately attracted me to this game is that it is set and based on ancient India and ancient Indian lore and mythology, and just a world that has not been explored much in video games, and one that I have not played. I can't think off the top of my head, unless I'm forgetting something, not counting Civilization 6 where I can play as India. But a game I can't think of another game that I've played that takes place in India, especially in ancient India. I can't think of one either.
And so that's wild when you think about how many people live in India. By population proportion, there should be so many more video games set in India. Right. So it's crazy that neither of us can think of any, except for Raji.
And
Shame
so,
on us.
well, but so that's what I think has made this game. It made me be like, I want to play this. And then also, now that I am playing it, it's so fun because not only is it just being so far a great game. There's my first impressions already, but still,
Damn it, Jerrett.
I'm sorry, I just got too excited. But it's not only that, it's also been a very educational experience because as you go throughout this game, you get, this is what's really fun about this. So I'm going to jump too far ahead. I'm getting too excited about myself. Let me pull it back and give you a little background about what this game is. So you play as Raji. So the game is Raji, an ancient epic. You play as the titular character Raji, who is this young girl who she and her brother are both circus performers. And then they are just so happen to be at the place when this demonic invasion takes place into the human world. And her brother, Golu, is taken by the demons. And so she's immediately like, I got to go rescue him. What's up? So, because this is obviously bad, they're destroying everything, killing a lot of people. But the demons are rounding up not just Golu, but all of like the children of this village and taking them in carts to somewhere else. Where that is, I don't know yet. I haven't got that far. I'm just still trying to like slowly progress throughout the world and chase these carts of kids.
I'm going to go on ahead and throw out a conspiracy theory, even though I know you're probably going to answer it later, but I don't care. I think that this is the setup to Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Do you remember? Like they take all the
yeah, who could forget Chitty Chitty Bang Bang? Because that kid collector is the creepiest person.
The child catcher. I think he's called like the child catcher.
Yeah,
Good
that
heavens.
dude is creepy as hell.
I
He's
mean,
like
if
greasy
ever there
long
was,
hair,
like,
that like
a
penguin-esque.
demon.
Yeah, for real. For real.
So yeah, I definitely know what's happening.
But so you then go on this big quest aided by the gods to help destroy this demonic invasion. And so what's really interesting though about this game is you have like you hear Raji speak and talk and say like calling after her brother Golu and trying to catch him and like telling the demons like after you fight demons and destroy them and you're like I'll do this the same to everyone who stands in my way. But what's great is the story of Raji and even their like understanding of her is all narrated by the gods.
Ooh, interesting. So this is actual like vocals, right?
Vocal narration,
it's
not
spoken word
text.
and not just kind of like
Text bubbles.
Because there's voice acting that is just the sporadic like noise, like a hey or a hmm.
Yeah, no, it's fully acted. It's fully acted, fully voiced. Everything.
That's awesome.
I mean, obviously there are subtitles, but it's not like text pop-ups that are then read or something like that. And so that's been really cool to see, especially in just like a 3D platformer like this, which how this one is it is a 3D platformer, but it's more of an isometric one. So it's more the top down rather than the straight behind the third person view or even like the straight 2D, 3D kind of thing. Yeah. But what's great about it is that it's so smooth. Like you don't have any control over the camera. The camera moves dependent on where you reach in the levels. But but I've never once have I run to a place where I'm like, the camera is screwing me up right now. I can't see what I'm trying to do. It's like blocking me. It's hard and cumbersome to work around. It's incredibly smooth and incredibly well done. Everything about this game so far is incredibly well done. The animations of Raji as she moves around and jumps around and attacks and dodges, leaps and bounds. All of it is so well done. The design of the demons themselves are great too. They look very goblin-esque and there's lots of different kinds and just all obviously influenced by Indian folklore or Indian mythology and lore. And it's just such a fresh world. It feels so vibrant and it feels so just educational even because you're getting, as you progress through this world, you will come across these big murals that will then, as you come to them and you activate them, the gods will like describe to you what's going on in this. Because the main god who helps you in the beginning stages of this is Durga, who gives you your main weapon, the Trishul, which is kind of a trident spear.
Ooh.
And so
Who doesn't love a trident, man? That is not a used enough weapon. More tridents 2021.
Right? And so it's a really cool because then immediately you go into and it has these really easy to follow tutorials of how to use all of your different abilities. But see, here's where I think the game that presents you the character of Raji, because you're kind of like, wait, this is a young girl. How's she immediately given this gift of this trident and this weapon, this mighty spear? But then how is she able to fight so well? But then you remember she's a circus performer who highlights in like tightrope walking and like other acrobatics and everything. So that is how Raji moves. You hit the you hit B to do your dodging and rolling, and she does it as an acrobat would. So it's very smooth flipping all around. But the thing is, as you time her jumps with her attacks, you will do different and better, more powerful attacks. So there's a lot of really good timing that you have to work into. The other part about this, though, that's really awesome, is that a lot of places where you will battle demons, because it is normally like you'll fight in like one area, one room that's then like has, like where the barrier comes up, you can't leave until after you've defeated all the enemies. That stuff happens a lot. That's usually where you fight them. But in those points, there will be, say, like a pillar or something in the middle of the room. You can run over to that, run up it, pushing B, do a backflip off and do like big attacks and everything. You can hit everything, every attack button is modified by the environmental thing that you interact with. So like say A, which is usually the button you press to do like a final execution after you've injured a demon enough. If you say run up to the same pillar and hit A when you get to it, instead of running up it with B, you will then do like a big stunning attack that just she like grabs the pillar and swings around it and does this big massive sweeping attack. It's so cool. And so it's just all of these different, how much fluidity there is to the combat, how much fluidity there is to the movement just really feels fresh. And it just feels so fun, especially in this more isometric top-down view that you've got. But there's a ton of other things that you can do. Your spear becomes throwable if you hold the left bumper or left trigger, sorry, and then you can throw it, and it does damaging attacks. You can eventually, where I've gotten, not to be too spoiler, because I'm not going to talk about a whole lot of spoiler stuff, but you do eventually get a bow also, which you can then switch in between using the spear and the bow. And again, the bow's attacks the bow can be a melee weapon, the bow can be a ranged weapon. And so the same thing though, it has different moves based off of what the environmental things you interact with. And so it just I've saved so many video clips of my fights, because it's been so fun to mess around and see all the different ways that you can pull off some really impressive and beautifully animated attacks. It's so cool and it's so fun to see. And so you're going through and as you're continuing on and fighting these demons, every once in a while you will get to cutscenes and everything in the story, which then I think is really great in how they present these, because those, while the rest of the world is 3D, the cutscenes then become basically what I would say are 2D paper, it's like marionettes almost, like silhouettes of marionettes, because like you see like strings like attaching to their arms and stuff.
Like from the 6th Harry Potter movie where they're talking about like the 3 brothers.
Okay, right? I'm gonna really lose some cred here, but I haven't seen that.
Oh my god, no,
I'm
Jerrett.
sorry. So I don't know what you're but still, it's like, so it's basically, it's just like, it's like silhouette puppets, but they're like marionettes because they have like the dowel rods and everything connected to their arms kind of thing.
See.
So it's like they're being operated from below, not above.
I gotcha.
And so that's how all of the cutscenes are like these 2D paper animation looking puppet show-esque things. And so it's like, if someone turns their head, it like picks up and like flips perspective of the head or something like that. And so it's a very unique way of separating from the cutscene to the story, rather than the cutscenes just being these fully animated things. It really gives you that second to take you out of it, be in the story for a second, and then you get back into the combat and the exploration. You can go through, and so obviously once you kill demons and things like that while you're fighting them, you'll lose health. I mean, you'll gain health after defeating enemies and things like that, which I also like how they show the health bar, because the health bars for Raji is like the petals of a flower beneath her, and you'll lose those and stuff like that.
Hell yes! And so who doesn't love a fresh new health bar? Right?
Instead of just being a bar up in the top of the screen or something like that, it's just under her character. And as you kill other demons and things like that, you'll be able to refill your health. Yeah, and then too, once you get, there's executions, and different executions. Once you get them low enough in health, different executions for different demon types, and different demon types based on which weapon you're using. So there's a lot of depth to this and a lot of cool things to see, which just makes it so exciting, and you get so sucked in to all the action. Plus, there's some other great platforming things, like there's wall running, Who doesn't love wall running and having to figure out the timing
love
of that?
wall running. Literally everyone.
It's so fun to do. It's such a great mechanic. And so that's what's so great about this, though, is it just is. But that's what I can't get over. And I'm going to say this again. And I know I've already said it again. How fluid and smooth this game feels. That is the thing that instantly has attracted me to it. But then.
So,
Yeah,
quick
go
question.
ahead.
So even on the Switch, the Switch isn't an especially powerful console by any means, but even with it being on the somewhat limited tech specs of the Switch, there's no stuttering. You don't
Haven't
find that
seen
there's
any.
lag.
I've been playing
Excellent.
handheld.
Nice.
So
Oh, maybe that's the key. Play it handheld.
Well, no, I mean, I would think I normally, like, I notice on Civ 6, when I play Civ 6, it runs significantly better when docked. But
Yeah.
so it might, Raji might run better when docked, but it still runs seamlessly in
It's
handheld
also
as well.
not half as massive as Civ 6
Right,
is.
exactly. It doesn't have quite as much going on. But then there are these really fun puzzles that they throw in too. Like there will be these different parts where you come upon mandala puzzles where Raji will walk on them and they're covered with dust and the dust will blow away and then it has the circle and different rings inside it. And you have to move and put the puzzle together by moving the different rings to make the
That
image.
is nice.
But the thing is, those aren't usually the mandala puzzles aren't like further explanations into the background of the gods. They're the story bits that tell you Raji and Golu's background.
Oh, cool.
So you come across the murals, and that's where you learn about the gods. And then you come across these, and this is where you learn about Raji. So it's very interesting how it works into the storyline. But what's really interesting too is that Durga is the one who gives Raji the weapon and pushes her on in this quest and is here to aid her. The main conversation between the two gods is conversation between Durga and Vishnu. And so it's very interesting. And so it's very interesting because Vishnu is of the opinion is like, I don't know about this. Was this the right call? And so, she's like, I know you say she's strong, but is she strong enough to face what's coming up? And so as Raji keep beating demons and fighting harder and harder enemies, you can hear Vishnu being like, you're right. She is very powerful. She does have what it takes to complete this journey. We will, and just having this like conversation. It's like, I'm right here. I can hear you, but this is great. You're helping. Thanks. Kind of thing is like a fun little storytelling way of going about it too, where it's not all done through cutscenes. This is all through it's done in cutscenes and you get that background, but you're also getting the supporting story built to you while you're playing and while you're fighting and all this stuff. It's a very fun way of telling the story. And then there also, when you come up in certain areas, there will be shrines that as you fight, the shrines will fill up with power, and then you can go activate them during the fight to then unleash a super attack, basically, on all these different stuff. So the more damage and the faster you do damage, the faster the shrines will fill up. But then even those shrines are then things that you can interact with, such as like running up to jump off to do bigger attacks. So it's like, even if it's there for that purpose of giving you the special attack, you can still use it for other things when you can't use the special attack.
Awesome.
So it's just so well thought out and like fleshed out in every sense. And the story's been fantastic. The music, oh my God, is so good too. Obviously,
I haven't heard any of the music yet, but I cannot wait. Can't wait.
Obviously very traditional in Indian music, but it's just so good. It's in all aspects. So I'm loving getting to hear that too, and just how it pushes you forward in the thing. But here's what I was not expecting about it. And I think the big moment about this that made me love it even more. When I got, again, sorry, slight spoiler here that you do unlock other weapons. When I got the bow, and saw that the bow is and these bows and the bow and Trishul are gifts from the gods, obviously, that you get, and they're blessing you with their power to use. I was like, wait a minute, what other game have I played where it's a kind of a fighting isometric platformer-esque action adventure where you receive blessings from the gods and weapons from the gods to take on, in this older game's case, other gods, but in this case, demons. Do you have any idea?
Part of me wants to say Pyre, but I don't think that's right.
God of War. The original God of War 1, 2, and 3.
You're right. I forgot that it used to be that way.
Yes. And so I got that weapon, and I was like, oh my God, this is giving me such God of War vibes, and I love it. But here's what's awesome about it. Is this what I put on my notes? I was like, it gives me strong God of War 1, 2, and 3 vibes, because unlocking power and receiving, like, and then you can, after a certain amount of time, and finding orbs to then, therefore, what do they call them? Favor orbs. And those can unlock more abilities for the weapons too. And I was like, this upgrade system and receiving the weapons for the gods, being able to switch quickly in them and between them in battle, is very similar to God of War and feels very God of War, just way less blinding rage. And it's a completely, because like, which is what Kratos has. Like, Kratos is just mad and angry. And this is just like a story of like trying to save your brother. And so it's interesting how it's like the same styling of a game, I would say, but the tone of it is so totally different, and makes it feel so very fresh and so very original. And that, when that clicked in my head, I was like, oh man, this game was already great, but now that I see these parallels and I'm understanding why I connect to it so well, I was like, well done. Just well done. It's so good. And so I think I've played probably 4-ish hours maybe into it so far. I think I just defeated, when I was playing last night, I think what would be the first like big boss. I've gotten through many bosses and things like this, but at this one I definitely fought like the first boss, because now I'm in like a new area that looks totally different than what I've been exploring around before. So it's just this incredibly well done game. I'm so excited to get into the rest of it and see where the rest of the story goes and how it ends, what other weapons and abilities and demons I'm going to face. It's just, if you like anything, if you like the original God of Wars, but if anything I've said is pulling you into this at all, like, I say give it a shot, because it's so good, and it's paid off so much.
Oh, I was already sold. I didn't really need any more convincing.
Yeah.
But this just makes me that much more, because what I guess I didn't really have a good grasp of, I watched the trailer, obviously, so I figured it would be something along these lines, but I didn't really realize that there would be so much dynamic depth to the combat system.
Oh, there's so much.
Really looking forward to being able to actually explore that for myself. As soon as I finish Spiritfarer, I've committed to finishing this game before I pick up Raji. So tell me one into the next.
So I think I've pretty much, like, those were pretty much my thoughts on Raji as a whole right now. Obviously, just in loving it and enjoying it, having the time of my life playing this game. But though I am very curious to know about Spiritfarer.
So Spiritfarer is such a surprising delight. The minute I saw that trailer in the Indie Direct, I was like, oh, I'm buying that game. Hey, no question. I'm absolutely buying that game. I can already tell that I'm the intended audience. People like me are the ones that are supposed to play this game. But I didn't really, I'm not one for critical thinking. I don't like to think too much. I just see a pretty trailer and I go, yes, I'll play that game. And that's exactly why I got into Spiritfarer. But I also did understand at the outset that it was kind of a resource management game where you have a set amount of things that you're supposed to, basically chores. There was going to be a chores aspect to it. But it has turned out to be so much more than I could have asked for, times 10. And I would say that by now, I've been playing it kind of obsessively. Like, it's kind of one of those games where once you get into a groove, you're like, oh, I can't stop. I'll just do one more day. I'm just going to do one more day. Okay, one more day. And then it's 5 hours later and you're like, actually...
It's like my Civ.
Exactly. So it's basically like you look up and your own day in real life is suddenly gone and you're like, oh no, what did I do? So I think minimum I've got at least 15 to 20 hours into the game already.
Oh, wow.
And I'm not done. So I am one to derp around, obviously. I don't really play games quickly, so maybe that's just me, but it certainly is already worth the $25. I believe the game is $24.99, so definitely well priced.
Let me jump back to that. Raji is also in that same. When I bought it, it was still, they were doing like a 10% off because it had just been announced kind of thing. It just been announced / released, but it's still, I believe it's like $25 normal price.
And I actually think that sale that was going on for the Indie Direct actually extends through the end of this month. So the discount on Raji should still be up by the time you're hearing this on August 25th. Spiritfarer actually isn't included in that sale. Not sure why, but I also don't care because it's a great game and it's worth the money. So the premise of Spiritfarer, and it's kind of in the name, but in a much more cuddly and pleasant kind of way. You play as main character Stella, and she is newly the new Grim Reaper. So how the game sets this up is actually done really well, and I loved this intro cutscene. Stella and her adorable kitty cat Daffodil, who is like a big fluffy Persian kitty who doesn't love that, with like a cute little collar and a bell. Stella and Daffodil wake up in a gondola, and they are being ferried by Charon, the not Lord of the Dead, but the I guess just the ferryman of the dead, the farrier of souls. And Charon is horrifying. He's both horrifying but also really nice. His design, he's like a gigantic, billowy, cloaked lump with just one glowing black eye in a completely voided out black face. And he's got like these long, creepy sleeves with like little lace cuffs coming out of them. And it's like, Charon getting fancy. But so he's actually kind of terrifying to look at. I love his design, and he has this very deep, gravelly voice. Because I will say that in comparison to Raji, Spiritfarer doesn't have true voice acting. It has the hms and the ha's. And each character does have a voice, but there's no spoken dialogue in terms of the voice acting. It is all done in dialogue bubbles. With a few very rare exceptions. Charon actually does pronounce the words Spiritfarer, and I think maybe Everlight, because Charon has been the farrier of the dead for so long that he's just straight up tired of it. He's like, it's my turn to retire. I get to move on to the next stage of my soul's journey. So he's ferrying Stella to a location called the Everdoor. And the Everdoor is gorgeous. So I don't really consider this a spoiler because this is intro first 5 to 10 minutes of the game. So the Everdoor is this extremely magical looking land of red, like blood red water, surrounded by these beautiful white blossoming trees against like a weird orange sky. It's really cool. And the Everdoor is actually a bridge over water. But it's a bridge that is so extreme, its arch forms a perfect semicircle, which when reflected in the red water becomes a full perfect circle.
Nice.
And that's the Everdoor. I love that imagery of it not being like an actual physical door that you open into the afterlife. It's a different kind of door. It's more like a portal. And the Everdoor is where souls are ferried to basically go into the official afterlife, because the world that you're in right now is more or less limbo. It's kind of purgatory. It's where souls are going when they're not really sure where they're going to go next. So Charon basically tells you, hey, I'm retiring. You didn't really have a choice in it, but I picked you to be the next Spiritfarer. And he gives Stella and Daffodil their own little Everlights. So the Everlight is just this little glowing orb of what appears to be pure light. And he officially gives one to Stella, but then Daffodil leaps into his void cloak and like kind of does some stuff, and he's like, oh god, ugh. And Daffodil comes out basically playing with her own ball of Everlight, and he's like, fine, you can both have one, whatever. So both Stella and Daffodil get their Everlight, and the Everlight is basically the tool of the Spiritfarer that can become anything that she or he needs. It can become a scythe if you're farming, not for reaping of souls, just for farming.
Damn it!
Damn it! It
I
can
want to
become
reap
a
souls.
scythe. It can become a pickaxe. It can be a fishing pole. It can be oven mitts. It can be something as banal as oven mitts. And the Everlight is really just what you need to not rave souls, because that's not really what you're doing, but it's your main tool to make your passengers happy. Because the whole goal of Spiritfarer is in the title. You are quite literally ferrying souls, now as the new Spiritfarer, from this limbo state into the official afterlife. And setting up the world of Spiritfarer takes place on what appears to be a vast sea. So it's just this wide open ocean, really reminiscent of Wind Waker, actually. Like when this place opened up, I was like, that's the Great Sea. This is Wind Waker. I know where we're at. Because this vast sea is peppered with Not necessarily isolated, but just lonely small islands here and there. There's no like one giant landmass. It's just here's an island with one little town, here's an island with one small city, here's an island that has nothing on it except some trees and strawberries. So each of these little islands is just kind of its own tiny encapsulated world. And Stella, as the new Spiritfarer, has both the Everlight and a boat. So thankfully, Charon didn't leave her entirely high and dry. He did plop her onto an island that already had an old, dilapidated boat available for her to commandeer and use as her ship to navigate this vast sea. So your ship, I don't think, has a name. I'll call it the Dauntless. Why not?
Perfect.
But the ship basically sails itself, thankfully. So all you have to do is go into the navigation room, you pull up this massive map system, and you just pick with your cursor which island or which empty space you want to go to next, and the ship will sail itself there. So it does show you in the upper corner, like, hey, this is how far you are en route to your destination. And depending on where you're going, you might be able to actually stop the ship and kind of get off along the way and do some other stuff. So this sea is populated by not just small islands, but spirits, of course. So your passengers. So the first spirit that you acquire is actually an old friend of yours, as it turns out. So that first island that you're dropped off on does contain one whole soul, and that is your, I guess, your previous best friend, Gwen. So whenever you encounter a spirit just kind of out and about in the wild, they just look like these faceless, shapeless, cloaked figures. They're really cute. They're not sinister looking, but they're just basically, void people with little pinprick white eyes and just kind of these billowing cloaks around them. But spirits that you can actively interact with and potentially ferry into the afterlife will have a ghostly spirit outline, like a shadow, hovering over them. And that's how you know that they're important. They'll also talk to you way more than the other NPC spirits will. So once you find any given spirit, you take them back to your ship. And once they're on the ship, there's this really cute ceremony that happens where they go from being their blobular selves into what is their true spirit form. So Stella is kind of the only person in this world that appears to have a normal human appearance. She has really cute orange hair, beautiful dark skin, a big star-shaped hat, because of course her name is Stella. Why wouldn't her hat be shaped like a star? And she's like little. She's either really young or she's really short. I can't really decide what age I think she is. I would guess 16, but who knows?
I was going to say, like, from her design, she looked like, I thought of her as like a late teenager or something like that. Yeah.
So, and who knows how old Daffodil is? She could be 1,000.
It's true.
It's just a mystery. But Gwen comes onto your ship, and she is gorgeously designed as a anthropomorphic deer. Not necessarily a stag, but like she's this beautiful deer, and she's designed in such a way that gives you an immediate impression that she is a rich, fancy lady. Because her fur kind of comes up around her in like this big kind of lush scarf, and she smokes a long-stemmed cigarette like Cruella de Vil, and like her feet are shaped in such a way that her hooves kind of look like high heels, and she stands very prim and proper as she smokes her long cigarette, and it's just like, Gwen, you're awesome. And she is kind of a snob. She's clearly a society girl, but she genuinely loves Stella, and their friendship was clearly very important to both of them when they were alive. The details of any given spirit's death are thus far never really revealed. They don't really talk about how they died. It's more like, hey, I'm dead. That's just how it is. You're dead, I'm dead, nobody knows how it happened. They could have died of old age for all I know. But the point is, they're all dead, and you have to bring them onto your ship. They acquire their true spirit forms, and then you set sail. And you are helping these spirits reach the afterlife by helping them resolve any lingering issues that are preventing their spirit from moving on. So that could be that you have a lot of guilt from when you were alive. Maybe you did something that you're really ashamed of, and you're trying to come to terms with that guilt so that you can move on. Maybe it's just that you really miss your family, and your family's still alive, but you're dead. And you're coming to terms with the fact that you're never going to see them again. Maybe, when they get to the afterlife, but maybe it's just that you have really strong attachment to your still living relatives. So the individual motivations of all the spirits could be anything really. And they all have very unique stories. It does appear, based on the crafting system, that there's a finite amount of spirits. So this isn't the kind of game that you play, infinitely. It seems to have a clear end that's going to happen eventually. And I would guess that I'm about three-fourths of the way to that end, I think. But you can basically take as much time as you want with these spirits. Each of them just kind of comes and tells you, like, hey, I think I should do this next thing. And you're like, cool, we'll get to it when we get to it. And then you can either progress that person's individual storyline, or you can do somebody else's, or you can do none of the above and just craft as much as you want and have that be your entire gameplay experience. But you do need souls to kind of cycle through your ship because they give you money. They give you a very value, because of course the myth regarding Charon is that souls, physical bodies, would be buried by the Greeks with 2 coins over
Right,
their
that's
eyes.
what I was going to say, like that,
And
yeah.
the coins are what they would use to pay the ferryman. So each of the spirits, when they get onto your ship, they pay you 1 coin. It's called an obol, an O-B-O-L. So they just give you 1, and those obols are what you use to basically redeem at shrines throughout the Great Sea that give Stella more powers. So you can get the ability to glide using your hat. You can get a super jump. You can get the ability to bounce and get an even bigger jump. So her powers aren't really like bombastic. They just help you navigate the world. So, speaking of the world, you navigate islands primarily to get spirits, of course, but also to get materials, because this is a resource management game, and obviously the crafting system is the primary function of the game. So, of course, there's the relationship management aspect of managing your passengers emotionally, but also you have to meet their very real needs of they need to be housed, they need to be fed. So with your ship, you have a ton of upgrade options available. So you can both make the ship physically bigger, thereby giving it more space to house more passengers, but you can also upgrade your blueprint table, which is your crafting center. So your blueprint table allows you to build a guest house on your ship, build a chicken coop, a field, a garden, orchards, and of course anything else that you may need to create bigger and better crafting materials to make bigger and better structures. So the whole game is really built on this progressive system of, okay, now you've got this base, here's the next thing. Now you've got that, here's the next thing. And that is really well balanced by which areas of the map are available to you at any given time. Because when you just have your base ship, there's only so much of the map that you can explore, and the rest is blacked out in shadow, because your ship doesn't have an icebreaker on the front, so you can't break through the ice to get to the Arctic waters. Your ship doesn't have a lantern on the front, so you can't make it through the fog to get to the fog area. You need a rock breaker to blast your way through rocks to get to the next area. So there are natural barriers built in to make sure that you kind of finish each given area to be able to then move on to the next one. So it's not a free, do whatever you want kind of game. There's really a certain number of tasks that you really need to get done in any given area to move on to the next one.
Nice.
So the crafting materials are so reminiscent of Stardew Valley. This really is kind of, I really hesitate to call it a nuevo Stardew Valley because it's not. It's really its own thing, but it will be very similar to people who have played Stardew. Because, for example, a couple of the first things that you get as new structures on your ship are a field and a garden. And in the field and garden, you plant seeds. So in the field, you can plant linen seeds. I think it's called flax. You can plant flax, you can plant lettuce, you can plant leeks. Why not? Leeks go in the garden. Never mind. You can plant flax, tea, and coffee. How about that?
Yeah.
You plant those in the field, and then in the garden, you can plant root vegetables, things like carrots, corn, turnips, etc. So those go hand in hand with your ship's kitchen. So who doesn't love in-game cooking? I personally love it.
It's a fun thing.
As evidenced by Breath of the Wild, I love in-game cooking. So from the field and garden, you get ingredients to then take to your kitchen to cook real meals. So for example, when you cook corn, you get steamed vegetables. And those are then dishes that you use to literally feed the passengers on your ship. That same principle applies to every other structure that you can build. If you grow an orchard, you can use those apples to make apple pie. Hell yes. And so on and so forth. There's also a heavy mining aspect. You need a foundry. You need to be able to smelt ores, etc.
Wow, there's a
So
lot.
there's a lot going on in terms of the crafting. You eventually get a sawmill so that you can refine logs into planks and build more structures, blah, blah, blah. There's a ton of different crafting aspects that you get through a variety of means throughout the game. So all this to say that there's a very in-depth crafting system, but the real focus of the game is, of course, your passengers, the people on your ship. Now, I'm planning to go much more into this in our full review because it is really spoiler territory. But the individual soul journey of each of your passengers is really the heart of the game. Because as you're completing these tasks for each of your passengers, you get to know them better. Something that I love is a key function of the game is the ability and the requirement to hug your passengers.
Aw.
So at any given time, you can, because basically when you talk to a character, you get like a little decision wheel of what you want to do with them. Do you want to give them something? Do you want to feed them? Do you just want to talk to them? Do you want to hug them? Or do you want to check their stats? Because they do each have individual happiness stats to gauge where they're at. Because if a passenger is unhappy, they're probably not going to progress their story. I don't actually know what happens if they're unhappy because none of my passengers have been unhappy. Of course not. You really have to actively neglect them for them to become unhappy, I think.
And I wondered, what happens if one does reach like the maximum unhappiness level? It's not like they can go back to life, but like, do they just stay on the boat? Can you not get them off the boat until they're happy, or like?
I think that that's the case because that's really the only thing that could happen is that they just are unhappy and they stay on your boat indefinitely, which could potentially become a problem if you're trying to gain enough new space to be able to get more passengers. But so far that hasn't been an issue for me. It's really pretty easy and pretty intuitive to keep your passengers happy. But really kind of once a new passenger gets on your ship, the first thing you are supposed to do is hug them.
Aww.
And I love that function. So what I love on top of that is that not every passenger wants a hug all the time. And if a passenger doesn't want a hug, they will just straight up tell you, no thanks, I don't want a hug right now. And I just love that little bit of consent was like built into the game because it just reinforces to real life people that, hey, you should ask somebody before you just give them a big old bear hug because sometimes they don't always want one. So A+ for that. So you can hug characters, you can feed them, and then of course you talk to them and uncover their background. So we'll use Gwen kind of as our standard because she's more or less the tutorial passenger. She's the first one you get. She's the first one that you're supposed to ferry into the afterlife. So Gwen's background is not exactly tragic. You don't really know what happened in her life completely, but you gather that she was raised in wealth. You can tell that she's accustomed to a certain amount of extravagance because one of the islands in the afterlife is actually modeled after her childhood villa. So there's this huge mansion, this villa that you can go to in Limbo that Gwen says is her house, her childhood villa. So it's interesting how certain places in this Limbo area actually mirror what you think was real in real life. Because even though Gwen looks like a deer now, it is implied that she was just a regular human before she died. So this isn't some sort of entirely different world separate from our own. These people just used to be regular people, and then they died, and Limbo is its own separate world. But it has these pieces from each soul's past that anchor them in Limbo and help them come to terms with whatever inner turmoil they have. So you gather through Gwen's conversations that her relationship with her father was really strained. Her childhood wasn't always that great. She probably felt lonely a lot of the time. And you can kind of gather that Stella was one of her few good influences and one of her few really strong friendships. So they have a really powerful friendship, and the fact that you as Stella have to be in charge and ferry your own best friend's soul into the afterlife is kind of heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
And it is pretty heartbreaking when you have to eventually take Gwen to the Everdoor. She's the first one that you send through the Everdoor. And this is where I think, a certain facet of the game is just really beautiful. Again, slight spoiler, so don't listen to this if you don't want to. But when you fairy souls it through the Everdoor, they don't just disappear. They become starlight. They become a constellation in the sky.
That's really
which
cool.
I think is so beautiful. So actually, the first time I saw a constellation in the sky, I was like, what the hell is that? Because it was Charon. And I didn't think, it didn't show him getting one, I don't think. Or maybe I just wasn't paying attention. But I was like, why is there only one constellation? It's Charon.
Oh.
And then when you ferry Gwen through the door, you actually watch her become a constellation. And how beautiful is that?
Mm-hmm.
So
like a peaceful way to say goodbye.
A peaceful way to say goodbye. Now, there does appear to be at least a hint at this point for me that Stella might have some inner turmoil of her own, but she is a silent protagonist. Stella doesn't really talk. You just talk to other people and they more or less talk at you. You don't really talk back to them. So it's unknown to me right now kind of where that inner turmoil is going to go, but it's a part of the mystery that I'm really excited to uncover.
Nice.
So all this to say, Everlight, I think as of today when I checked, has a 10 out of 10 rating out of over 900 reviews. That is such a fair assessment. My one gripe with the game, and this is pretty minor, is that at a certain point in any given area that you've currently unlocked, I kind of find myself floundering. I kind of have this moment of, what exactly should I be doing next? I feel like I'm kind of stuck. And it's usually just a matter of getting more materials to be able to build more stuff. But there are just these periods that I kind of get into kind of on an almost rhythmic basis of find a new area, awesome, hecka exploration, loving it, explore that entire area, and then kind of get into this lull of being like, okay, now I'm a little bored. I want to really get into the next area. But once you do get into that next area, so much exploration. Huzzah, we're back at it again. So it goes through these periods of feeling very fast-paced to a little bit more of a lull to very fast-paced again. So that might just be the natural rhythm of the game, or maybe I'm playing it wrong. Who knows? It could be anything. But I really can't recommend Spiritfarer enough. What other games did I play this year? Not including Control. I mean, at this point, it's probably one of the best games, possibly the best game that I've played this year.
Oh, wow.
The Control is really the only other contender that I can think of off the top of my head. So I'll reassess that later, but it is already just an incredible game.
Nice.
And I can already tell that I'm going to want to play it again after I'm done with it, because I can now see that there are things that I missed about certain characters. I didn't find out what their favorite food is, for example. So I have to go back and actually really flesh those out, get that completionist strategy going.
Right.
But yeah, Spiritfarer is a 10 out of 10 game for sure. On a bad day, a 9 out of 10. So everyone should play it.
So great all the way around.
Great all the way around. Oh, I didn't mention this before. Spiritfarer is from Thunder Lotus Games. Their previous two games were not severed.
Sundered.
Sundered,
right?
Yes.
That's what you told me before.
Yes, that is correct. Are Sundered, which was like a Eldritch-based 2D 2D Metroidvania game, and Jotun, which I think got really good reception. Jotun came out in 2015, I think, and then Sundered came out in 2017. So Thunder Lotus has a pretty good schedule of releasing games on a fairly regular basis. Playing Spiritfarer makes me want to play their other games.
Nice.
Because
That's
now
always
I'm thinking,
great.
What else could they possibly be making out there? And then just a final shout out, the game's soundtrack is incredible. Everything about it is wonderful. Some of the daily soundtracks, like just derping around on your boat, are really minimalist, not a ton happening, but there are many different tracks that play during special events that are awesome.
Nice.
And the composer is Max LL. And Max LL has been a longtime collaborator of Thunder Lotus Games. I'm reading this part from GamingAudioNews.com. And he scored the previous music for Jotun and Sundered. So he's well familiar with what Thunder Lotus wants. So the soundtrack is also a 10 out of 10. Absolutely would recommend overall.
I love that when studios have like their because a lot of times with a lot of games, it can move around from composer to composer. But I love when there are studios that have like their set composer who does all, like Supergiant comes to mind, Darren Korb. He does the music for all of their games, and you just know you're going to get a soundtrack that perfectly matches, and it's it's always fun to see when that happens.
It's incredible. So Max LL, good job, great soundtrack, love it. Very nice. And everyone should play Spiritfarer.
I do want to go ahead, since you were talking about the composer. I forgot to give a shout out to the composer since I mentioned the music for Raji as well, but that was Linus Tesloz, who was the composer for Raji, an Ancient Epic. But I know, right? That's fun. It's a fun one. But I think these games are so great in so far what we've played them. But what I think, as I've heard both of these games, my thoughts, and then you heard your thoughts on Spiritfarer, I think the thing that makes these games stand out so much to both of us is that they've taken these concepts and these themes that are normally told in so much darker ways and has really turned it on its head. Like, you normally don't interact with the river Styx in video games unless you're playing like Dante's Inferno or God of War even. And then with Raji, an Ancient Epic, it pulls very strongly, or it has those very strong God of War vibes for me. God of War is a very angry game, a very violent game. And not saying, like, Raji obviously has violence in the sense that you're fighting these demons, but it's the theme and the driving force behind Kratos and behind Raji are completely different. And it just really sets these two normally darker toned games into a much lighter way that I think is very attractive. And
I definitely agree. And I love that, games are so much more willing nowadays to branch out into these more soft, emotional areas, especially in the case of Spiritfarer. Because, I feel like back in my day, games of yore, it was really just, punch, slash, shoot, violence is king, and now it's like, let's reassess that. I think that we actually have a lot more to explore here in the world of video games, and I love seeing more of these stories come out.
Oh yeah.
I definitely agree.
Awesome. Well, those are our first impressions for both Spiritfarer and Raji and the Ancient Epic. Have you played any of those games or are on the fence about which ones to get? Actually, I know there are a lot of people, we've been kind of having in our Discord this fun, like several people who are there who are like, which one should I get? And I'm just like, hey, okay, several people have already jumped on the Spiritfarer train. I need people to jump onto the Raji train with me because
it's a boat.
Sorry, the Spiritfarer boat. And I need people to jump on the Raji boat with me. So, but both these games are great. Obviously, we want to know what you think about these games as well. So send us a message at teamchatpodcast@gmail.com. Find us on social media and message us there. Join our Discord. Talk about us with these great games there with us too. We would love to hear from you. But before we go, we do have to do our soundtrack spotlight, which it was a hard contest to decide between these two games which ones we wanted to do to feature for their soundtrack spotlights. We will feature the music from the other in the future, but for this episode we are going to feature the music from Raji and an Ancient Epic by Linus Tesloz, which is Lament is the track that we'll be doing. So this is a incredibly well done score, really blending in the themes and the culture of India and really capturing that in its music. And I think it just sounds fantastic when matched with the beauty of this game itself. So listen to that after the close of the episode, which is pretty much now. Well, until next time, everybody, I'm one of your hosts, Jerrett Wilson, joined by Rachel Mogan.
Peace out.
We'll see you all next time. Stick around for the song.